I used to think that if two people truly loved each other, they could weather any storm. I believed that. Believed in unconditional love. Believed that no matter what happened to me, poor or rich, successful or unsuccessful, that person would still choose to stay. Because when you love someone, you don't just love the best part of them. You love the days when they struggle, even when they fall. But it turns out, not everyone thinks that way. I still remember that fateful day. A gloomy afternoon, drizzling rain outside. I came home from a failed job interview, tired, soaked, and carrying a bag of cheap food because my wallet was empty. I just hoped she would smile, ask me how things were, and then hug me like the first days. But no. She sat there on the sofa, her hand on her packed suitcase. No smile, no questions. There was only a determined look and a quiet but cold and cruel sentence. I can't continue living like this. And from that moment I knew, not all promises are kept, and not all love is tested by time. There is love that only lasts when everything is still beautiful. Maybe love doesn't break in a moment. It cracks gradually, little by little, like a small crack in a glass, seemingly harmless, but then one day suddenly shatters beyond repair. I began to realize it from very small things, the lost glances every time I talked about my dreams, the unconscious sighs when I said I still hadn't found a job, the time she scrolled through her phone when I told her about the interview, or the way she avoided mentioning our future. At first, I tried to reassure myself that it was just pressure, a difficult period that everyone has to go through, that she still loved me, she was just tired. But I was wrong. A person who is truly in love will not let the other person feel like they are a burden. I began to change myself. I tried to smile more, to be more optimistic, even though inside there were endless sleepless nights because of anxiety. I did all the chores around the house, cooked her favorite dishes, made little surprises on the weekends, all just to see her smile again. But in return, I was met with increasingly cold indifference. My love was like a candle flickering in the wind. I protected it, I held on, but the other person was the wind that blew it out. Not a heated argument, not a hurtful reprimand. Our relationship did not end in a fuss. It gradually sank into silence, a silence so thick that I could hear myself sighing in the night. There were days when we sat across from each other all evening without saying anything. Not because we had nothing to say, but because we were both afraid that the words we spoke would only make the distance more obvious. Every question, "What's wrong?" was answered with nothing. But it was that nothing that was the clearest sign that we had lost each other without realizing it. I remember one evening, I sat quietly on the chair. She was less than a meter away from me, and yet I felt lonelier than ever. I wanted to say it all. How tired I was of holding on to someone who no longer wanted to stay. But my throat was choked. I was afraid that if I said it, everything would really end. We were still together, but we didn't really belong to each other anymore. The times we held hands became less frequent. The hugs became superficial. I began to realize that love doesn't die overnight. It fades every day, little by little, in the times we choose silence instead of being frank. And then, when there's nothing left to say to each other, that's when love has long gone. People asked me why we broke up. I just smiled, shook my head, and said that we were no longer compatible. I made up a reason that sounded easy to understand and accept. Because to tell the truth, that we still loved each other but didn't know how to be together was too complicated and too painful. I used to think that love was big enough to overcome everything. But it turns out, sometimes love isn't enough. I loved her, and I believed she loved me too. But in love, emotions alone can't save everything. We lost connection, listening, and most importantly, sincerity. The truth is that I didn't have the courage to say that I had changed, that I was no longer the strong, resilient man she used to love. I was tired. I was lost. And I hid it all behind a fake smile. I was afraid that she would see my weakness and then leave me. But that was what made her further and further away from me. We broke up not because one of us was wrong, but because both of us didn't know how to keep what was right. I lied to everyone, not to blame her or to save face. I lied, just because I didn't know how to express that pain in words. Sometimes love doesn't break because of betrayal, but because both of us tried silently, until we were exhausted. After she left, the room became strangely quiet. No more laughter in the morning, no more late-night conversations or soft music in the kitchen, just me and the void. At first, I tried to fill that void with work, with friends, with quick fun. But then at night, silence knocked on the door again, and the memories came rushing back like a tidal wave. I started writing a diary, not to blame her nor to justify myself. I wrote to understand myself. I wrote to name the feelings I had always denied, the hurt, the fear of abandonment, the feeling of not being good enough. I wrote to admit I needed to heal. Slowly I learned to forgive. Forgive her for letting go. Forgive myself for being weak. And in the process, I realized something important. No one is responsible for healing you but yourself. No one can save you from sadness if you keep it inside. I started running every morning. I ate healthier, spent more time with my family. I learned to be quiet without feeling lonely, learned to smile at the little things. And every day I found myself getting a little stronger. Healing is not forgetting. It is the process of accepting and learning to live with the scars as a beautiful part of who you are. Perhaps it is only through brokenness that one can realize the value of wholeness. After months of ups and downs, I feel like I have been reborn, no longer the old me, but not necessarily a completely new person. I am simply the most honest version of myself. No embellishment, no defense, no fear of being hurt, but ready to accept everything that comes, as it is. I start new days no longer to cling to the past, but to move forward. I signed up for a dance class that I used to be shy about. I talk more with my relatives, not just to tell stories, but to truly listen. I open my heart to new friends, not because I am lonely, but because I am ready to connect. I no longer expect a love to come to fill something missing in me, because I understand that true love does not come to complete you, but comes to accompany you when you are complete. And then one afternoon, as the sunset colored the sky, I looked at myself in the mirror and smiled. Not because I had forgotten her, but because I had learned to live without forgetting. I had learned to love myself. And that was the greatest gift the past had left. Life doesn't promise to be easy, but it always offers a second chance for those brave enough to start again. I used to think that happiness lies in having someone hold your hand tightly, in a long-lasting relationship, or in saying, "I love you" at the right time. But now I understand. Happiness does not come from others. It comes from within yourself, from learning to forgive, learning to let go, and learning to appreciate yourself. We have all loved, made mistakes, and broken hearts. But that does not make us less valuable. On the contrary, it is those cracks that make us feel moved by simple things, a strange look carrying sincerity, a cool breeze recalling distant memories, or waking up one morning with a peaceful heart. You can lose someone, but never lose yourself. You can be in pain, but don't let the pain stop you from loving again. First of all, loving yourself. And then, if you're lucky, someone gentle enough to write the next days with you. Life is not a fairy tale, but it always opens a new page if you dare to turn it. And believe me, the next chapter will sometimes be more beautiful than you ever expected, if only you believe that you are worth it. So live, love, and remind yourself, you have been through the storm. You deserve the rainbow.